Okay, this video is for a Weber conversion for a Civic 1975 Honda CVCC. I've been working on this carburetor for probably 90 hours trying to tune it, and I couldn't quite get it, so I swapped out to the Weber. It's the 3236 model K-724 is the model that I swapped it out to. So in my case, what happened was I pulled the top of the carburetor off, and there's two jets inside. I pulled those jets, cleaned them out. There's a very small part at the end I forgot to clean, so I had to pull the top of the carburetor again to clean the center of the jet out. The jets lie just under this top cover here, and that solved 90% of my problem. But it would rough idle. It would not idle. It would fluctuate between, like, 1,400 and 1,000, and I thought it was an air leak. Well, I sprayed carburetor cleaner around the base, wouldn't fluctuate, it wouldn't change the idle. So what happened was I pulled the carburetor off, and what I found was there's a base plate here, then a gasket, and then this one. Well, what happened was on mine, underneath this gasket here, underneath was all wet. So there must have been some leak at the bottom underneath this heat plate when I pulled it apart to put the Weber on. So that may have been the issue, because spraying carburetor cleaner around here doesn't solve it. It won't change the idle. But if you were to be able to get underneath there and see, there's too many gaskets here. There's a gasket, a pan, and a gasket, and all these things could leak and have problems. So what I did was I pulled my carburetor off, and I found that the secondary was frozen. So if I pull the throttle, the first opens here. If I can get the throttle here to work. The first one opens, but the second one doesn't open. It's frozen shut. This one is frozen shut. So what I found when I drove the car, I would have to short shift it. 2,500, 3,000, and then short shift it. So the secondary was not even opening. It's frozen with carbon and stuff, and I didn't want to waste my time trying to fix it. So what I did was I got this Weber kit, and I installed it on the car. And what I did was I ran my brake. So the carburetor is supposed to be mounted opposite. And what happened was, long story short, I lost a bit of the torque, but it revs like crazy now, and it's so smooth. But the problem is that if I flip the carburetor around and I run the primary back here where the short runners are, someone had said that you get more torque. But when you do that, you have the cable issues, and it gets in the way of this vacuum line back here. So what I did is I ran my brake booster vacuum line around the car to the other side, and I'll show it to you in a second, and it goes into the other side of the carburetor. The problem is if you run the carburetor reverse, all these, the choke, the throttle, and the vacuum line are on one side, and they interfere with each other. So what I had to do, this is the cleanest way to mount it in my opinion. What I had to do is I had to take the throttle cable, because it looks like a motorcycle throttle cable, and I had to make a little pinch washer on the back side, and I put some orange Loctite on it so it wouldn't be removed. And when this fluctuates and rotates, it was hitting this arm right here, the choke arm. So I had to bend the choke arm up slightly, and the choke, to get the choke to work properly, along with the throttle, because the throttle wouldn't move completely without hitting at the top of this metal right here, this metal bar. I had to bend it slightly up because this thing was hitting it. So behind here is like a half washer and a lock nut that holds in the throttle cable. So the car runs great. It revs to the moon. It idles perfectly, but I lost just a bit of torque on the bottom. I may flip the carburetor. I don't know. It runs so good right now, I don't think I'm going to. I'm just going to drive it like a sports car instead of like a grandpa car like I used to drive it. But I removed the heat plate, because the heat plate was, in my opinion, a cause of a lot of problems. Where at the base right here, that was where that first gasket was leaking, but it was underneath the heat shield, so you couldn't even see it. So I had to run the throttle cable back and through the front, and then the choke cable from the front. And here's where I ran the brake booster comes in and to the bottom. The fuel line comes in. I have a nice fuel filter, and I just capped off the vent from the valve cover. And also I put a piece of tape on the inside of the bottom here. The vent tube is supposed to run from this valve cover up into the air cleaner. But I just put a piece of tape in there to block it off, and I'm running a little filter right here. So I hope this helps everybody. If you have any questions, I thought I'd make a video before I put all these parts in my shed, and I won't be able to take them out again. All right, take care.